There comes a time in life, often after the noise has faded, after the children are grown, after the career is behind you, when the silence grows loud. And in that silence, many of us begin to reflect. We think about the things we tried to control, the relationships we chased, the jobs we forced ourselves to keep, the people we clung to even when they drifted. We remember all the times we pushed too hard, only to be met with resistance. It's like trying to force a river to flow upstream. Exhausting, unnatural, and ultimately futile. And perhaps now, sitting at the edge of your 60s, 70s, or beyond, you're wondering, was it all supposed to be this hard? Is peace really something I have to fight for? The ancient Stoics would tell you no. They would tell you that peace isn't found by wrestling with life. It's found by learning to move with it, like a river that bends with the land, not against it, like the tree that sways in the wind rather than snapping in defiance. They believe that much of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our refusal to accept what is. We hold on too tightly. We force, we grasp. We try to mold life into something it simply isn't ready to become. And in doing so, we lose the very peace we seek. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." But how do we get there? To that inner sanctuary, how do we stop forcing and start flowing? This isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about learning to recognize the difference between effort and struggle. It's about discerning when it's time to act and when it's wiser to let go. Because wisdom, especially in old age, is not about knowing all the answers. It's about finally learning which questions are no longer worth asking. You see, many of us grew up with the belief that life rewards the ones who push hardest. But in truth, life often opens its doors not to the most aggressive, but to the most aligned. The ones who work with the rhythm, not against it. The ones who have learned that grace, not force, is the true measure of strength. So today, we're going to explore a different kind of power, the power of surrender, the strength of stillness, the art of moving with life instead of battling it. And if you've ever felt worn down by your own effort, if you've ever wondered whether there's another way to live, softer, wiser, and more free, then this message is for you. Let us walk together through these Stoic lessons, not to learn how to conquer life, but to finally understand how to live it. Lesson 1. The power of letting go. Imagine holding a rope tied to a heavy weight. You're pulling with all your might, hoping to lift it, fix it, make it move. But the more you tug, the more tension you feel in your hands, your arms, your shoulders, and then something gives. Not the weight, not the rope, but you. Your strength begins to wear thin. Your hope begins to fray. That's what happens when we try to force life to comply with our desires. We grip tightly to outcomes, to relationships, to identities we've worn for decades. The dependable one, the provider, the parent who must always be needed. And when those roles begin to fade or shift, we resist. We cling harder. We tell ourselves that letting go is the same as giving up, that surrender means failure. But the Stoics saw this differently. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when we learn the difference between what is in our control and what is not. He said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." It's a deceptively simple idea, but it can change everything. Letting go does not mean you no longer care. It means you stop trying to control what was never yours to command. You stop measuring your worth by how tightly you can hold on, and start honoring the wisdom it takes to release. Letting go might mean forgiving someone who never apologized. It might mean accepting that a child you raised now walks a path you don't understand. It might mean loosening your grip on old regrets, the what-ifs, the I should have saids, the moments you revisit again and again like a wound that refuses to close. You are not the past. You are not the outcomes you once failed to change. You are not the rope. You are the one who gets to decide, today, Whether you will continue straining against what cannot be moved, or whether you will release your grip and finally breathe. Letting go, in truth, is not an act of weakness. It is one of the greatest expressions of strength. A tree does not hold on to its leaves in winter. It lets them fall, not because it has given up on life, but because it knows life must move in seasons. So must we. The more we release, the more space we create. For peace, for healing, for the quiet beauty of things we were too busy forcing to notice. And often, in that stillness, life begins to return to us in softer, more honest ways. What are you holding too tightly today? What might happen if you let go? You may find, as many have before you, that the very act of loosening your grip is not the beginning of loss, but the beginning of freedom. Lesson 2, flowing with life. There is a quiet kind of wisdom in water. It does not argue with the rock in its path. It does not demand that the mountain move. It simply flows, around, beneath, over, carving its way gently, persistently, and without force. Lao Tzu, the ancient sage so often aligned with Stoic thought, once said, "By letting it go, it all gets done." It sounds impossible in a world that glorifies struggle, but maybe, just maybe, we've misunderstood strength all along. Because true strength isn't always loud. It isn't always about standing firm. Sometimes it's about knowing when to bend. We were taught to fight, for survival, for success, for our families. We were raised to believe that if we didn't push, we would fall behind, that if we didn't resist, we would be overcome. But as the years unfold, we begin to see the cracks in that philosophy. We see that some of the people who held on the hardest were also the ones who broke first, that the oak tree, mighty and unyielding, may snap in the storm, while the reed, flexible and unassuming, survives by bending. Seneca, the Roman Stoic, put it this way: "Fate leads the willing, but drags the unwilling." We suffer most when we resist what life is clearly trying to teach us. You may have felt it in your own life. The quiet friction of forcing something that isn't meant to be. A job that drained your soul. A relationship that refused to grow. An identity you wore like armor long after it no longer fit. And through it all, perhaps you told yourself, "I just have to try harder." But there is another way. To flow with life is not to drift aimlessly. It is to move intentionally but with awareness, to recognize the direction of the current, and to choose to go with it, not against it. It means knowing that your path may change. And that change is not failure but transformation. It means honoring the rhythm of your life instead of racing ahead of it. It means having the courage to pivot when the winds shift, and the humility to let go of destinations that no longer serve you. Think of the river. It does not conquer the landscape, it shapes it, quietly, over time. That too is your power. To shape your world not through resistance, but through resilience. To move not with panic, but with presence. To adapt not out of fear, but out of wisdom. When you learn to flow with life, you begin to see that peace is not a destination. It's a way of traveling. And the older you get, the more you realize peace is worth more than control. So the question becomes, what are you still resisting? That life is asking you to simply flow with. Lesson 3. Nature's wisdom, the art of timing. A peach doesn't ripen because we demand it. Spring doesn't arrive just because we're tired of winter. The tide doesn't rush back to shore to match our schedule. Everything in nature honors its timing. So why don't we? In the hurried world we were raised to serve, deadlines, responsibilities, endless striving. It's easy to forget that some of the most meaningful things in life cannot be forced, hurried, or scheduled. They arrive when they are ready, not when we are. And this truth, though often frustrating, is profoundly freeing. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never be in a hurry. Do everything quietly and in a calm spirit." He ruled an empire, yet knew the value of stillness and of waiting. You see, timing is not a luxury of the lazy. It is the wisdom of the mature. As we grow older, we begin to notice that every season of life has its own unique rhythm, and that rushing through one only leaves us unprepared for the next. The child cannot become wise before knowing heartbreak. The parent cannot learn surrender until they've let go. The soul cannot grow if it's always being pushed forward by fear. A great tree takes years to root. A vineyard may wait decades before its finest wine is poured. And some of the richest parts of ourselves, patience, forgiveness, understanding, are not available in youth. They ripen with time, loss, and quiet perseverance. Yet still, we grow impatient. We want the relationship to heal now. We want the answer to arrive now. We want our lives to make sense, right here, right now. But nature reminds us, the fruit does not ripen before its season. If it does, it spoils. When we force ourselves to bloom before we're ready, or force others to grow on our timetable, we stunt the very beauty that was meant to unfold naturally. The Stoic approach is not to stand idle, but to work with time rather than against it, to plant carefully, to water with patience, and to trust the invisible work happening beneath the surface. Sometimes the greatest growth is the one we cannot see yet, the healing that's taking root underground, the clarity that's forming quietly in the corners of our doubt, the understanding that can only come after a certain number of sunrises and setbacks. So, if you find yourself in a season of waiting, of not knowing, of quiet becoming, take heart. You are not behind. You are becoming. You are not stagnant. You are ripening. And when your season comes, you will be ready, not rushed. The lesson is simple, but it isn't easy. Honor the season you're in, because everything meaningful, love, peace, wisdom, grows best when it's given time to bloom. Lesson 4. The balance of action and acceptance. There's an old image the Stoics loved, the archer. He trains, he sharpens his aim, he pulls the bowstring with focus and discipline, but once the arrow is released, it's out of his hands. The wind may shift, the target may move. He can control the shot, but not the outcome. And so it is with life. We prepare, we show up, we love, build, work, and hope. But at some point, we must accept that the results are not entirely ours to command. This is the delicate dance between action and acceptance, one of the most misunderstood yet most liberating lessons in Stoic philosophy. You see, some believe acceptance means passivity, that to surrender is to be defeated. But the Stoics were anything but passive. They were emperors, generals, teachers, builders of entire ways of thought. They acted with purpose, but they did not obsess over results. Epictetus said, "Do your duty, but do not be attached to the outcome." Simple words, hard to live, especially in a world that taught us to measure everything, our worth, our legacy, even our love, by results. But what if the result is not your responsibility? What if your role is simply to take the shot, and then let life do what life will? As we grow older, this lesson becomes less of a theory and more of a necessity. You've poured your heart into people who walked away. You've given your all to efforts that didn't bear fruit. You've tried to protect, to fix, to hold everything together, only to watch some things fall apart anyway. And that hurts. But here's the truth. Just because something didn't turn out the way you hoped doesn't mean your effort was wasted. Your love still mattered. Your work still shaped something, even if only your own growth. The arrow still flew true. We are not gods. We are not here to control the wind. We are here to show up with intention, then let the wind do what it will. When we obsess over outcomes, we tighten our grip on life, and like sand, it slips through our fingers. But when we act with clarity, then release the need to control it, we find something remarkable. Peace. Because there is deep freedom in doing your best and no longer carrying what happens after. So what's the lesson here? Do your part. Love well. Speak honestly, show up, take the shot, but don't let the outcome define your peace. That belongs to the wind. That belongs to fate. And maybe, just maybe, it's always belonged there. Lesson 5. You cannot force relationships. There is a moment and quiet, painful and unmistakable, when you realize someone you love is already walking away. Not always in anger, not always in cruelty, sometimes just in silence. And what do? We reach, we plead, we tighten our grip, believing that if we just love harder, explain more clearly, give a little more of ourselves, they'll turn around. But they don't. The Stoics, in their timeless calm, remind us, you cannot force someone to stay, and you should not. Love in its truest form is never born from control. It's born from freedom, and stays because it chooses to. Seneca once wrote, "The wise man is content with himself." Not because he doesn't love others, but because he no longer builds his happiness upon them. He loves, but without chains. He connects, but without clinging. Because the truth is this: people come and go. Some stay for decades, some for a single season. And each one, whether they bless us with loyalty or break our hearts with distance, brings a lesson. Some teach us patience, others teach us boundaries. Some arrive when we are lost and help us remember who we are. Others leave when we least expect, teaching us how to stand on our own. But none of them, not a single one, is truly ours to keep. Like rivers that shift their course, like birds that fly south for the winter, human relationships must be allowed to evolve, or they will die beneath the weight of our expectations. Trying to force love is like squeezing water in your hands. The tighter you hold, the faster it slips through your fingers. The Stoic response is not to harden your heart, it's to soften your grip, to love deeply and still let go when it's time, to be grateful for what was rather than bitter for what is no longer. To say with quiet dignity, "You are free to go, and I'm free to grow." This doesn't mean it won't hurt. It will. But it also means you will heal, because the love that is meant for you will never need to be forced. It will meet you where you are. It will stay, not because you demanded it, but because it sees you and chooses you. And if it doesn't, then let it go with grace. Let the leaving become your liberation. Let the ending become your beginning. Let every person, whether they stayed or left, be a part of your becoming, not your undoing. In the end, we are shaped not just by the ones who walked with us, but also by the ones who walked away. Lesson 6. Ambition without anxiety. There's a kind of ambition that burns us out, and there's another, quieter, deeper, that builds something lasting. You've likely known both. The first is frantic. It races the clock. It worries about titles, trophies, timelines. It keeps us up at night whispering that we're falling behind, that we're not doing enough, that we should be further along by now. The second moves with purpose, not panic. It grows like a tree, slow, steady, rooted in meaning rather than noise. And that is the Stoic path. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, never chased power. He didn't scheme or manipulate his way to the throne. He prepared, he studied, he lived with virtue. So when the crown found him, he was ready. Not because he chased it, but because he was in alignment with it. That is ambition without anxiety. That is action without attachment. In today's world, we are taught to chase success like it's running away from us. But what if we stopped chasing and started aligning? What if we stopped measuring our lives by what we accomplish and started asking, am I becoming who I'm meant to be? You see, the Stoics weren't against ambition. They just redefined it. Ambition to them wasn't about control. It was about excellence. It wasn't about status. It was about substance. They didn't say, don't aim high. They said, aim well, and let go of the rest. Because anxiety comes not from the goal, but from the fear of not reaching it, from believing that our worth depends on its outcome. But here's the truth no one tells us when we're younger. The most meaningful things you will ever do, the ones that shape your soul and touch others, might not come with applause. They might not bring riches or recognition, but they will bring peace. When you act with clarity and calm, you stop rushing. You focus on what you can do today, not what the world thinks you should have done yesterday. And in that space, your best work is born. Because true greatness does not emerge from frenzy, it grows from grounded, patient persistence. So let your ambition be a quiet flame, not a wildfire. Let it warm you, not consume you. Let it guide you, not control you. And when the time comes, when the reward arrives or doesn't, may you be at peace, because you gave your best not out of desperation, but out of devotion. That, dear friend, is the kind of ambition that outlives anxiety. Lesson 7, the art of adaptability. There's an old saying, the oak resists the storm and snaps, the reed bends and survives. We spend much of our lives trying to be like the oak, firm, unmoving, proud of our principles and plans. But life doesn't always honor our blueprints. The Stoics knew this well. They weren't rigid philosophers locked in ivory towers. They were soldiers, leaders, statesmen, people who faced real, unpredictable storms. And they understood. Survival doesn't belong to the strongest, it belongs to the most adaptable. Because in life, nothing stays the same. Our health changes, our roles shift. People we thought would walk beside us forever turn down different paths. And the ones who endure, who grow even through the grief, are those who learn to pivot with grace. Adaptability isn't weakness, it's wisdom in motion. It says, this path may no longer serve me, and that's okay. It says, I can release the version of myself that no longer fits. It says, what worked before might not work now, and I am willing to learn again. There is great dignity in that kind of flexibility. Many people cling so tightly to what used to be, an identity, a plan, a routine, that they fail to see the new door life is trying to open. But those who are willing to adjust, to flow, to remain curious instead of bitter, they are the ones who rise no matter how many times they fall. Think of a sailor on the open sea. He cannot control the wind, but he can adjust his sails. He does not curse the shifting tide. He studies it. He moves with it, not against it. So too must we learn to read the currents of our lives and respond rather than resist. If you've reached a stage in life where something feels out of place, where what once fulfilled you no longer does, where life has gently or suddenly rearranged your path, take it as an invitation, not to abandon yourself, but to rediscover yourself, not to collapse, but to evolve, not to fear change, but to shape it with intention. The Stoics believed that nothing was permanent. And that was not a source of despair, but of freedom. Because if nothing is fixed, then everything can be renewed. So today, ask yourself, where am I being too rigid? Where might a little flexibility create space for new growth? Remember, it's not the strongest who survive life's storms, it's the ones who learn to bend and begin again. Lesson 8, the strength in stillness. In a world that never seems to slow down, stillness is a forgotten art. We're told to move, to do, to fix, to fill every silence with something, noise, distraction, explanation. But the Stoics, they knew better. They knew that some of the most profound answers arrive not in action, but in the spaces between. Stillness isn't laziness. It's not withdrawal. It's presence, full, awake, unshaken. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And he was right. Our minds create storms that never reach the shore. We rehearse worst-case scenarios, argue in our heads with people who aren't even in the room, and try to solve problems that may never come. But in stillness, the noise settles, the spinning slows, and beneath the surface, clarity begins to rise. Think of a pond. When agitated, it's cloudy. You can't see a thing, but when it sits, undisturbed, it clears, and suddenly the bottom becomes visible. The same is true for us. How often have you made decisions in haste only to regret them later? How often has your rushing led you further from peace? Stillness gives us something that urgency never will: perspective. As we grow older, we are given a gift, the gift of time not filled to the brim. And in that time, We can choose either to numb ourselves with distractions or to sit quietly with ourselves and listen. Listen to what the heart is really saying. Listen to what life has been trying to teach us all along. Listen to the soft voice of wisdom that only speaks in silence. Stillness teaches us to respond rather than react, to act with intention rather than impulse, to find calm not in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of understanding. In stillness, we remember that we don't need to chase every thought. We don't need to win every argument. We don't need to fix every moment. We simply need to be fully, honestly, gently here. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. We begin to hear ourselves again. We begin to see the truth more clearly. We begin to heal. The strongest mountain does not shout, it stands. The moon does not hurry, yet it always rises. And you don't need to race anymore. You've spent enough of your life in motion. Now perhaps it's time to master the power of stillness. Because sometimes the greatest strength is not in doing more, but in learning how to be still, and discovering that in that quiet place, you are already enough. So much of our pain in the end comes not from what life has done to us, but from what we try to do to life. We push, we pull, we grip tightly to people, plans, and outcomes, convinced that with enough effort, enough control, we can bend the world to our will. But the Stoics, in their unshakable calm, invite us to consider another way. They teach us that life is not a battle to be won, but a rhythm to be felt. That happiness does not come from controlling everything, but from living in harmony with what is. Because what's meant for you and will not require force, and what resists you again and again might not be yours to carry. Think about your own life now. How much energy have you spent fighting currents that were never meant to be swum? How many sleepless nights have been lost to chasing things that deep down were trying to leave? How often have you mistaken effort for alignment, busyness for meaning, noise for love? This is not a judgment, it's a wake-up call, a gentle one, a wise one wrapped in the deep compassion that only age and reflection can bring. Because there is freedom available to you now, not in doing more, but in letting go. Let go of what you cannot control. Let go of who no longer chooses to stay. Let go of the belief that success must come with strain, or that peace must be earned through exhaustion. Instead, lean into stillness. Trust in timing. Flow with life, as rivers do, not by brute force, but by patience, by softness, by knowing the difference between action and obsession. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are simply arriving fully into a season of wisdom. And now you get to choose. Will you continue to force what resists, or will you finally allow what wants to unfold? Start small. Maybe it's releasing the need to fix someone else's path. Maybe it's walking away from a goal that no longer brings you joy. Maybe it's sitting in silence for 5 minutes a day and just breathing. That's where peace begins, in soft surrender, in deliberate stillness, in the quiet power of letting go. Because when you stop trying to force life, you begin to see its beauty more clearly, not as something to conquer, but as something to witness, to join, and to trust. So take a deep breath. Loosen your grip. Step gently into this next chapter. Let go, not because you've failed, but because it's time to be free.